well-known face we've got today for Heritage Trust interview, and it's nice to see you back here.
Nice to be back.
You were first signed by Dunfermline in season 84-85 by Jim Leishman.
That's right.
So you've been at Hearts for quite a while.
Aye, for 4.5 years. Aye.
Mm-hmm. So what made you come to Dunfermline?
To get a game, probably. No, I think it's a well-known story. This, when I started off at Hearts, there was a big influx of young up-and-coming players. There was myself, Gary Mackay, Davy Bowman, John Robertson, a few others. And we'd all played in Hearts' first team when we were 16, 17 years old, and that was really unusual, you know. And the manager at the time, probably purely financially, was driving the young players forward. So I did that, and I think that's still probably one of my claims to fame. I think I'm still the youngest goalie ever to play in the Premier League. But not long after that, in that same season, I got a bad knee injury. And Hearts signed Henry Smith on the back of that, and Hearts went on and had a decent run in that, and Henry, to be fair to him, had played a big part of that wee success, and I couldn't get back in. And Alec MacDonald was the manager at the time, and he says to me, he says, "Look, Westy, I've got a perfect scenario." He said, "I've got a senior goalkeeper that's 10 years older than you." He says, "To be honest with you, he'll always play if he's in form." And he says, "And I've got a young up-and-coming goalkeeper behind him, so I've got the perfect scenario." However, when Leash came from Dunfermline, I spoke to him, and he says, "Look," he says, "you almost guaranteed first team football at that time." Hugh White was just coming to more or less the end of his career at the time, who had been a fantastic servant to the club, and it was big boots to fill, or gloves from my point of view to fill, and that was the opportunity, and that's Jim sold me that kind of idea, and I came in, and the rest, as I say, is history.
Mm-hmm. Because you came in towards the end of the season, so you just had, it was April 85 you made your debut,
yeah.
And we were in the second division.
That's right, aye.
And then 85-86 was the season that we won promotion,
aye.
And you played most of that
season. I did, aye. It was, I think the final part of the 85-86 season, I think, when I first came to the club, I think we played 8 games, or I played 8 games, and we just missed out on promotion. It was gutting to miss out on it. But the next season, you know, we pushed for it, and it was different for me, to be fair, because I'd been at a Premier First Division club, and it was going to play at a lot of places I'd never played at, which was interesting. Some of them were interesting, some of them were a bit more adventurous than others, but it was a fantastic season. And then, you know, when you get a bit of success, you know, you get promotion, that obviously cements your thoughts, and it's been a good move for me, and that, I mean, it's been well recorded, that bunch of guys who had that bit of success going through the divisions, there was no superstars. It was a great dressing room, great, you know, camaraderie, good team spirit, and a right good bunch of guys, and that was obviously led by Leash and Gregor Abel and John Jobson and Philip Yates, Joe Nelson. You know, the whole gang was just, it was, you know, I know it's the biggest cliche in the world, but it was a genuine kind of feel good club at the time, and to get that wee bit of success was a wee bit the icing on the cake.
Yeah. Who was here then? Well, Norrie would have been here, and Bobby Robertson.
Aye, so the team almost picked itself, to be honest with you. So it was myself, Bobby Robertson right back, Bobby Forrest left back, Davy Young centre half, Norrie McCarthy sweeper, sort of double centre half, and then you had a kind of a mixture in the midfield. You had Stevie Morrison, you had Trevor Smith was at the club, Rowan Hamilton, Ian Heddle, and then up front you had sort of Ziggy, Jim Bowie, you know, wide right. You had Grant Jenkins and John Watson, and Stevie Morrison was there. You know, so it was a right good mix. And then I'm not saying for a second the team picked itself, because there was other guys in the fringes of it, but the vast majority of that team, and I think that was the key to it, was a bit of consistency, and a bit of, to be fair, at least probably a bit of luck within injuries as well, because there wasn't too many injuries with that whole sort of period. So it was a good balance of a team, to be fair. Yeah.
And then the second season, well, the next season was 86, 87, and then one promotion to the Premier League.
That was the runner-up season, wasn't it? Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That was one of the biggest disappointments, because
It was.
we felt we should have won that, and we probably didn't do ourselves justice, if I'm being honest with you. But at the start of the season, if you would you said get promotion, you'd have bitten people's hand off. So whilst it was tinged with a wee bit of disappointment, to go from successive promotions was fantastic. And again, there's a lot of similar faces in that team. I think at that time the likes of John Donnelly might have come, Ian McCall possibly, if I get my seasons right, the first time round. So there was a few different players coming in at that period of time, and but again, the success led. Football's like any other sport or life, I suppose. When you've got a bit of success, it makes life a whole lot easier coming into work, and everybody was looking forward to coming in and playing the games.
Yeah, because at the end of that season we had 2 games to play, Montrose and Airdrie, and we didn't win either. I know. Particularly the Montrose game, I think. It was really disappointing, that game, because we played actually okay, and I think they were on the park a couple of times, and I think they scored with a daft header, and that was it. But that was tinged with a wee bit of disappointment. But as I says, at the beginning of the season, to get promotion was the main aim, and we did that. Yeah. And one of the things you did, I don't know, you would have been there as well, but you went to Pebble Mill.
Oh. The infamous Pebble Mill at once, and that was, I'm sure many of the guys have told that story in their own inimitable selves, but the way they tell it. But I always remember sort of, prior to going down to Pebble Mill, Leash had come in, and I think it was actually Blair Morgan at the time, had some connection with the music industry, and had a EastEnders had just started on BBC One, as everybody knows. So they put the 2 and 2 together and came up with the Pars version of the EastEnders theme tune. And probably it's in folklore within the confines of the football club, but there was even a funny story prior to us going down when we actually made the record. We went up to a recording studio up in Sheens in Edinburgh, and we went there, and don't quote me on this, but I think it was a Thursday night, So anyway, we went to the recording studio, and the producers of the song said at the end of the first sort of wee session, says, right guys, we're going to have to do a bit of our production on this now. You guys will probably need to take a break for an hour or 2. And that was a proper good 2 hours, but we were told to go to the pub next door. Not a good move. So after we got hauled back into the recording studio, I don't know whether the tongues had been loosened a bit, or the vocal cords were a bit more smooth after having a few beers in the pub next door. So that was one of the stories from that. And then obviously later on we went down to Pebble Mill, and I believe we were the first people to ever sing live on Pebble Mill. And that was an adventure, to say the least. There's a wee story behind that which I can't say on the video, but maybe after I'll tell you. But Paul Coyle was one of the hosts at the time. I've never seen a man go so white, red, and then completely shattered in all the space of 3 seconds, all because of Stevie Morrison's antics. But that's another story for another time.
Oh well, we need to hear that one at some point.
Maybe off camera, definitely.
So your next experience was playing in the Premier League.
Aye.
Which was a fantastic achievement.
It was, for all intents and purposes, the same group of guys that had started off, 2 or 3 years behind before going up to the Premier League, and I think we played Hibs in the first game and drew 3 each. Big Youngie scored 2 goals. Got a massive split in his head the same day, so it was all go for him. And then a couple of weeks later we played Celtic out there at East End, and we beat them 2-1. And it was an adventure which it was just a fairy tale, to be honest with you. It really was. It was exciting times at the park, and I think the crowds and everything else, the whole town, the community really got behind the club at that point, and it was a fantastic time to be here. Yeah.
It's a really game that sticks out in your mind, and
And that first year up, I suppose just completely and utterly selfishly, you know, that the game against Celtic, I got man of the match that game, and always remember getting interviewed on the trackside by Jock Brown after the game. God, I look young there. I even had some hair, not much, but I had some hair at that point as well. And I always remember his opening line to me was, he says, well, Ian, he says, that must have been your busiest game ever. Your best game ever. And I says, well, I don't know about that, Joe, but it was certainly my busiest. And that was the sort of first line of that. And then the other sort of wee quirky part of that was they'd had, you know, pulled together a few of the saves that I'd made in the game. And he says, which do you think was your best save? And it was one they didn't realise I'd made the save on, and it was a near post header, and I'd touched it onto the post, and it went out, you know, got ricocheted out, and he didn't realise that I'd got a touch on it. He just thought of that. So that was it was just one of these days where everything went right for me and the club, and it was great. We really enjoyed that game. So that was one of the ones that probably sticks out in my mind, because one, we had a result, and two, I got man of the match. So I must have done something alright at that game.
Never got relegated, back out the first division.
Yeah.
But then you got back up again. Yeah. So it's been a bit of a yo-yo. You've been promoted and relegated quite a few times.
Aye, very much so. And I always remember my dad. My dad was he actually played for Queen of South and Arbroath for a couple of seasons. He was a goalkeeper as well. And I remember him quite late on in my career, and I can't remember exactly the game, but I think it was the second time I was back at Dunfermline, and he used to go to most of my games, in fact virtually every game, and I can't remember the context of the game, but it was near the end of the season, and he says to me, he says, you know, as far as first team games are concerned, he says, I think this is the first time you've played in a game where it didn't mean anything. He says, because you're either going for promotion or the championship or fighting against relegation, and I suppose that makes quite an interesting career, I suppose, when you think about it that way. You know, there's always something happening rather than the sort of stagnation in the middle of the divisions that sometimes you get. You know, obviously they were trying to get away from that with the revamp of the system, but you know, back in the day there was quite a lot of relatively meaningless games, you know, coming towards the end of the season, but because of, I don't know if it's a good thing and a bad thing, but whether, you know, us either challenging for promotion or fighting it off relegation, there was always something to play for. So I was, you know, again, I think we have to be realistic about, you know, where Dunfermline is in the sort of pecking order of Scottish football, notwithstanding the 60s, of course, with the halcyon days, but sort of as a realistic sort of approach, you know, the top of the second tier of Scottish football, you know, lower to middle of the first tier is a fantastic achievement for Dunfermline. And I think, you know, from that point of view, from my side of it, you know, it was that was what we had as part of that sort of era. Didn't make the relegations any easier, I hasten to add, but anyway, but it is what it is.
When you were back up in the Premier League, that season, you were ever present in the team, and we had signed Cosma that season. So, what was that like, being a goalkeeper and watching him play in front of you?
It's fine, but you know, he was a legend here at East End, but he was another step up as far as a player was concerned, and it was very, very obvious, you know, from the very beginning. You know, on the pitch, arguably at times he was probably ahead of some of us, you know, as far as you know, his thinking concerned and his abilities, but that didn't stop him, you know, us trying to strive to be as good as he was as far as a player was concerned. He was a gifted guy. From a goalkeeper's point of view, because I was obviously not on the receiving end of what he was doing, but so I can only go as far as training was concerned. Even though he was a central midfield player, his finishing was unbelievable, and at shooting practice he was as good as anybody in the team, you know, as good as any of the strikers or any of the attacking midfielders. And I always used to get frustrated because you never used to make many saves off of him, which used to frustrate the life out of me. But a gentleman and also a fantastic player. So you know, Dunfermline was very, very lucky to have him. And I'm sure you know the story about when he signed for the football club with Georgia Boyle from Bordeaux. I'm sure everybody's heard this story a million times before. Audrey Kelly was the commercial manager at the time, and I remember her coming into the dressing room area saying that great news, guys, we've signed 2 foreign guys from Bordeaux. And everybody's going, all right, who have we signed? And she said, oh, it's this a Hungarian guy called Istvan Kozma, and it must be a French guy, his name's Giorgio Boile. And we went, all right, doesn't mean anything to us. And of course it was before the internet and all that, and of course Giorgio Boyle from Belfast rolls up, and Audrey got a bit of stick for not knowing that George was from Ireland as opposed to the deepest, darkest France. But so that was the story behind the Istvan and George signing for the club.
Oh, right. I never heard that one.
True story, man.
Ian Munro was here then, because obviously when the first time we got into the Premier League, Gregor had left.
Yes.
And Ian Munro came in
yep.
as assistant to Jim. That season, the second season of Premier League, Ian was appointed as co-manager.
Aye.
Did that have any effect on you
I think
guys?
it's easy to say no, but I think maybe subconsciously, possibly. I think it was very unusual to have co-managers, you know, and I think at that point that you know, probably because of the legacy that Leash had created and the success that we'd had, if I'm being diplomatic, it was unusual, you know, and maybe not the best for the club at the time, but you know, that was just from a player's point of view. You know, obviously, you know, going back and looking back in it, there was obvious reasons for doing it, and certainly can understand some of them. However, I think in hindsight, you know, from all parties, including Ian, you know, Ian shared that with me previously, you know, that it wasn't probably the best thing to do, and I think it was unsettling at best, and I think that's probably what I would say about that. You know, should it have had a massive impact on the team? Possibly not, but unfortunately these kind of things invariably do, and it depends. You know, certain people it affects more than others, but it was unsettling more than anything else, and it was probably a distraction that the team could have done without. You know?
Yeah.
And that's no disrespect to Ian, I hasten to add, because Ian was a fantastic coach. I think by his own admission, management wasn't his particularly strongest suit, but anyway, the situation is what it was.
But that happens with a lot of people. They're a better coach than they are a manager.
I was talking to somebody the other day about this, that, you know, just because you're a fantastic footballer doesn't make you a good manager, and just because you're a fantastic coach doesn't make you a good manager. A manager has to have a number of skills, and none more so than organisational and people skills, I think, more than anything else. And I think that's where that differentiates, you know, good managers from average managers. I think it's not only their technical ability as far as the coaching is concerned, it's their management skills, their people skills, both in dealing with media and dealing with everything else that comes with running a football club, and all the pressures that you have at that, and it's a juggling act. You know, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that they have. But at that time it was unsettling at the football club, and you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing, but maybe in hindsight people wouldn't have have taken the same steps as they did at that time. But who knows?
Yeah, and then when you went being co-manager, and then of course then there was the big thing when Leash was kind of moved to the side and was going to move upstairs, and that obviously had an unsettling effect.
I think from everybody's point of view, I think, you know, and I'm not speaking for Leash, I'm not speaking to Ian, I'm not speaking for Ian or the powers that be, the club or the other players, but just from a purely personal point of view, I think everybody would have handled that differently. Alicia would have handled it differently, I'm sure. Ian would have handled it differently, possibly the board. You know, everybody. I think it wasn't the club's finest hour, and again, hindsight's a wonderful thing. But you know, history proves itself that it wasn't probably the best thing that could have happened for the football club at the time. And because of that, you know, there was a relatively relatively good side. No, it wasn't a world-beaten side by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a decent side. Was broken up, possibly unnecessarily. And I spoke to Ian Munro a few years back, and that's one of the things he did say. He says, you know, hindsight's a wonderful thing. He says, but he wanted to put his own stamp on things, and you know, and maybe given another opportunity, he might have handled things slightly differently in other ways. But again, you know, we all live and learn by our experiences and things like that. But I think going forward, you know, who knows? But it possibly wasn't the club's finest hour at that time.
Yeah, it made a big difference to the fans as well, because the fans, you know, weren't happy with it, and a lot of them probably still never came back.
They voted with their feet, you know, and then that's a prerogative of any supporter. And that's possibly why I was saying that, you know, it wasn't possibly the best thing for the football club. And I think, you know, Lee should be the first to say, you know, Ian will be the first to say, I'm the first to say, there's nobody bigger than the football club, and it has to be the best for the football club. And it just didn't quite feel like it was the best for the football club at the time. And then, you know, Ian has again, you know, broke up that side and brought his own players in, and you just wonder what would have happened if a different scenario had been born out of that. But again, who knows? Because we, you know, we can't change. We're good, but we can't change time, can we? We can't go back in time and change things.
And then you left in '91 and went to Falkirk with Paul Smith and Derek McWilliams came here. It was kind of swap.
Player swap. It was a funny situation, that, because you know, Andy Rhodes had come in and done great, you know, and Ian was playing him, and that's unfortunately that's the goalie's lot. You know, you either play or you don't play. And you know, the one thing I would never ever do is fall out with my fellow goalkeepers, because at the end of the day, he wants to play, I want to play, and it's the manager's choice. So if you've got any kind of question, it's with the manager, it's not with your fellow goalkeepers. And I've always prided myself in that, and the way I've handled that situation. So me and Rosie did get on great, and still got on great. You know, if Andy walked in here today, we'd still be, you know, hail fellow, well met kind of guys. However, just one of my good mates in Scottish football is Gordon Marshall. Marsh had left Falkirk to go to Celtic, and I knew, because he had told me, that they were under a bit of pressure to sign a goalkeeper. So the planets kind of aligned a little bit for me in that respect. That was one of the only times they did in my football career, as far as an opportunity was concerned. So I took that opportunity, and to be fair, you know, the first couple of seasons at Falkirk, you know, had a great time, had a bit of success. First season, believe it or not, I won, I think, about 6 Player of the Year awards, which was, I found, unbelievably surprising, because of the fact that, one, I'd taken Marsh's position, and Marsh was really well thought of there, and obviously I've come from the chief rivals, you know, so I thought I'd have had to take a wee bit of time to you know, get into, you know, the supporters' hearts. However, I did on my debut save a penalty, and we drew 1 each against a good Motherwell side, so I probably got off to a decent start, because I got signed on the Friday morning, we played on the Saturday. It was that tight, you know, so that was that. You know, there's always a rivalry in football, you know. I think nowadays it's probably lessened a little bit from then, you know. I think, not as far as the rivalry is concerned, but the amount of players that are going from club to club to club, because it's a little bit more nomadic than it probably was back in my day. But it was a big thing, and arguably as a player, until you've gone both sides, you don't really understand how deep the rivalry is, until you've experienced both sets of fans, which I'll leave it like that. That was interesting. But Smudger got on great. You know, both of us, you know, good friends, and travelled together as well, so that probably helped as well. It was a big wrench to leave. I can't say it wasn't, but it worked out okay.
And then you came back to us. It was a bit of pain that signed you. Via Dundee.
Very strange.
Yes.
Very strange. I'm actually not 100% sure whether that would be allowed to happen now. But Jim Jeffries says to me, he says, look, he says, I've got an opportunity for you and Neil Duffy to go to Dundee for a player swap for, I think it was Jamie, I can't remember Jamie's surname, and Decent Virtu, who came from Dundee to Falkirk. And again, I says, I didn't fancy it. And because at that time Dundee had a good French goalkeeper called Michel Pajot and Paul Mathers. But Jim Duffy was the manager, and he asked me to come up, and he says, look, to sort of mentor them and be sort of a sort of player coach side of it. So that coaching was always the thing I wanted to get into. So it was an opportunity, but it was quite early in it. So I can't remember how old I was at that time. It was probably about 30 maybe at that time. But all the time I'd still had a few problems with my knee, so it was always in the back of my mind that this doesn't go on for the playing side doesn't go on forever. And I'd done all my coaching badges, so it was a wee opportunity. So I did, and I went there. But I signed a temporary contract, and first game I played again was against Celtic, and it was a reserve game, and I had one of these daft games where I could have played all night and they still wouldn't have scored. It was just one of these daft games where I played a blinder, and I remember the Dundee chairman was a bit of a character from Canada called Dixon, Ron Dixon I think his name was. And Jim Duffy says to me after the game, he says, the chairman's really impressed with you, Westy. He says he wants to offer you a long-term contract. But I knew Bert had already been sniffing about coming down, so I didn't fancy it at all. And he was really putting me under a lot of pressure to sign a long-term contract, which was nice to be in. But anyway, my heart obviously is at Dunfermline, so that's where it all came from. So I think he was really surprised that I signed for Dunfermline. But it was a means to an end. But I don't genuinely think that would be allowed to happen, sort of 3 clubs in the one season kind of thing nowadays. But anyway, that's what happened. On signing, not on, I think you can go on loan, but on signing. So that's ended up coming back here.
And the rest is history again. Because we were in the first division, and when you came back, you played the last few games, lost out in promotion that season. Then 94-95, you started beginning the season, and then you broke it up. So and then
a lot of injuries. I had a lot of injuries. Sadly, my football career was tainted with a lot of injuries. The one thing I can always say with my football career was, I gave it my absolute best shot. I loved my training. I loved the fitness work. I was probably as fit as a goalkeeper as most goalkeepers were. I loved the gym, looked after myself, all of that. The one thing that you can't legislate for is injuries, and I had more than my fair share. And that was probably the most frustrating part of my football career. I had 20 years playing first team football. So if somebody says to you, you're going to get 20 years playing, you're a bit their hand off. But I had a lot of breaks, as in injury gaps within that, and because of that, other goalkeepers came in, and that frustrated me. And that, people always say, do you have any regrets in your football career? And that's the only regret I have is injuries. But you don't really have an awful lot of say in that, unfortunately. So I had 8 operations on my left knee, 2 on my right, various broken bones and bits and pieces. But But anyway, we are where we are. Yes.
So again, that season we missed out on promotion, and that was the funny time when we had the playoff against Aberdeen, which well, maybe not say a lot about.
So I wasn't involved in that, but wasn't the best of times. We didn't do ourselves justice in the playoffs, unfortunately. Certainly up at Pittodrie we didn't do ourselves justice. Here I think it ended up drawn 0-0 here, I think, wasn't it? But we didn't do ourselves justice, which was frustrating.
And then the following season, obviously 95-96, was it seems a long season for various reasons. Because that season we had a lot of injuries, there was a lot of changes in the team, and then obviously we had the death of Norrie, so it was a strange season. It
was arguably one of these seasons where a lot of it is a blur, because so much happened. I was kind of in and out the side. Myself and Guido were competing for the first team position. I had a few injuries. Guido had come back in, and then I kind of got in it, midway through the season and kind of stayed there. But whatever happened in that season will always be tainted by the loss of Norrie. But also marked by that as well. You know, who knows, he was probably looking after us, you know, the final few games of the season, and I think it galvanised not just the football team and the club, but the community as well. And I think sadly it was one of these situations where it was a horrible situation to be in, but there was a lot of good that came out of that, I think, at the end of the season. And you know, the feeling to win it at the end of the season, you know, was just unbelievable. I'd had 2 or 3 promotions and winning championships and, you know, bits and pieces within my football career, but I still say that was the best feeling. It was tainted with relief, sadness, but also joy about winning. And it was the Airdrie game would always go down as a very strange game of football for all reasons. But it was a remarkable end of season. The Dundee United game the previous week.
Yeah.
You know, up there.
You had a really good game that day.
Here's a wee thing about goalkeepers. Goalkeepers within football, as soon as you stop playing, people remember you. You get elevated for either to be better or worse than you actually were. That game, I actually didn't have a massive amount to do as far as amount of saves to do, but what I did do, I did well. And couple of key things at key times. You know, early on I had a couple of not crazy saves to make, but made a couple of wee sort of decent saves. I always say 2 things about that game. It was the closest I ever got to be kissed on a football pitch by Andy Todd, which is not a nice position to be in. The very last couple of minutes, I don't know whether you can remember that Dundee United side. That Dundee United side had a fantastic team. They had Owen Coyle in it, Craig Brewster, they had Christian Daly, you know, they had Maurice Malpass, you know, they had somebody else that went on to have a fantastic career whose name escapes me, but it doesn't matter. And Davy Bowman, Jim McInally, you know, so that was a top drawer. Ali Maxwell was in goals. That was a top drawer Dundee United side. But the interesting thing, they were a tall side, they were a big side. And I always remember the last couple of minutes, they got 3 corners on the bounce. And in the last one, I took, you know, I came for it and took it and landed in a heap. Christian Daly went flying over the top of me, and Toddy went flying over the top of me, and I've got the ball in my hands. And the next minute, Toddy grabs my cheek, both cheeks, and he's just about to kiss me, and I went, "Don't even think about it," or words to that effect. He says, "Brilliant, big man, brilliant." So I got up, and then the next part of that was Bert screaming on the touchline. He's absolutely roaring and waving his hands at me, and I didn't know what he was meaning, so I just booted the ball up the park, and the ref blew for full time. And he ran onto the park, Bert ran onto the park and grabbed me. He says, "Westy, I was telling you to kick it out, son, I was telling you to kick it out." And I said, I didn't realise it, because he said if you kicked it out, he said it would probably have wasted another couple of seconds, and that was it, because again, you remember we were down to 10 men for a lot of that game, because Stuart got sent off after 60 minutes. So it was a bit of a mad game of football, that. And the other thing I always say about this, as an away game, it was the best support I've ever experienced, the best atmosphere I've ever experienced as a Dunfermline player. It was just absolutely rocking that day. It was really fantastic, because Dundee United only needed to beat us, and they'd won the championship, of course, but if we beat them, there was another scenario that played out. So
that's right, yeah.
Exciting times.
It was and I think Dundee United shot themselves in the foot that day, where they put the fans.
Aye, that's right.
Us.
Yeah.
Because the effect that it had was phenomenal.
Yeah, it was. It was, as I say, the atmosphere at the game was just phenomenal. Then that took us on, obviously, to the following week at East End against Airdrie, and again, that was just one of the fantastic atmospheres in the game of football. It was just fantastic. You just knew, you know, about 2-3 minutes to go, that the other games had finished, and we couldn't be caught. So great, brilliant, fantastic, great memories. And then obviously the sad part of it was Norrie wasn't there to share it with us.
Yeah, that's right. That same season, you were on the bench against Airdrie at Clyde.
Yeah, up at Broadwood, aye.
And you
came on as a sub.
Up front.
Up front, that was a bizarre moment. That was a very much about that. I remember Mark Miller had been sent off early on in the game. Andy Smith was playing up front on his own. Andy had absolutely gone. He was completely knackered. And Craig Robertson and Bert Payton turned around and says, "You go on, Westy?" I says, "Aye." I says, "I'll go on." I said, I thought it was just to waste 30 seconds and that was it. But we ended up playing about 3 minutes. And I always say the same thing about that. I must be the only goalie, one, to be caught offside, because that was the first thing I got, was be caught offside. Second was the ball got played to their left back, and I had to run across to the left centre half where the ball got played to him, to the right centre half where it got played to him, to the right back, and I eventually threw myself and I block tackled the right back, but ended up splitting my head open because he cut me. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to go off here with a blood injury. So I'm desperately trying not to show the referee that I'm bleeding from the side of my head. So that was the next thing. And then literally the last touch of the game, they got a corner, and it was all getting played about, and it came to me and I tried to do this daft overhead kick and I just sclaffed it and the ref blew for full time. So that was my 3 touches as an outfield player: being caught offside, split my head open making a tackle, and a daft overhead kick. So that's my claim to fame, being playing outfield for Dunfermline Football Club.
It was different.
Very. Not in a good way, I hasten to add.
Oh, and then we got into the Premier League, and you played most of the season. We finished 5th that season, 96-97. The next season was a bit more difficult. We struggled a bit.
Aye.
And Lemachek was here.
Aye, Zoran Lemachek was there. Aye, yeah. So
you were vying with him for the position as well.
Aye.
So you vying with a few people for the goalie position.
Well, but that's the goalie's law. You know, you either play, you don't play. And as it says, that through my career at the football club, there was various other goalkeepers. We started off when I first came. Obviously, Hugh was here, and then there was Dave McKellar. Jim Watt was here, John Hillcoat, Guido, Zoran,
Chris Martin.
He just came at the very, very end of mine, and Lee Butler, and all of them really good guys. When I first came, Lindsay Hamilton was here the second time, and Lindsay left, and kind of got on with all the guys really well. But that is a goalie's law. You either play, you don't play, and there's only one person that's going to dictate whether you play or not, and that's the manager. And again, if you've got any problems, it's with the manager. It's not with the other goalkeepers. And it was even when I played, we didn't have a goalkeeping coach or anybody. So invariably, it was the senior goalkeeper that took the sort of specialist goalie training, and invariably it was me. And I quite liked that part of it as well. But that didn't stop, me still trying to obviously, even when I wasn't playing the first team, trying to, make sure that I was, competing and being as sharp as I can. But we missed out a wee story about my career at Dunfermline, going back a few seasons, talk about the Ian Munro era, when Ian took over as manager. That season, what happened was Rhodesy and me played 4 games each in pre-season, and I got 4 shutouts, and Andy lost 8 goals in those 4 games. And then the first game we played out there was the League Cup, and I think it was against Albion Rovers. It was either Albion Rovers or still Stenhousemuir. And I had 1 save in the first 5-10 minutes, then the rest of the time I could have been sitting up in the stand because it was that quiet, and we won 4 or 5-0. That was midweek. And then we played Rangers at Ibrox, the first game of the season, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't have a particularly good day in the training on the Thursday. I was okay, but nothing happened, and Rogie was putting the shutters up, and the first team and the reserve, and at that time the reserve played the mirror fixture of the first team, and the first team list went up, and Rogie was in the first team and I was in the reserves. And Rogie says to me, he says, Wesley, that must be a mistake. He says, that can't be right. He says, you've not lost a goal this season. He says, how can that be right? So I went in to see Ian, and obviously it was a private conversation, but the reality was, Ian says, I thought you had a poor day at the training yesterday. And I went, really? I says, that's what you're going to base this on? I says, I'm really disappointed in that. I says, I'm really disappointed. I says, we'll talk about this later on now, but that was that. Then Rogie played the whole season, and the second last game of the season, Rosie got sent off against Hibs at Easter Road, and we played Dundee United out there at East End in the final game of the season. And at that time, Dundee United were going for European place, and they just needed to beat us to secure that European place. Anyway, we went out there, and I had again one of these very, very rarely happen in my football career. I had one of these daft games where I couldn't do a thing wrong, and we drew 0-0 with them, and I got man of the match. And I always remember walking in here, and Smudger came in behind me, and at the top of his voice, he shouted for Ian Monroe's benefit. He says, "Westy, unbelievable season, big man." He says, "You must be the only goalie in the whole of the Premier League to go a whole season without losing a goal." And I just smiled at that, and Ian Monroe kind of looked sheepishly and kind of acknowledged what that was meant, but that was that story. Yeah.
Oh dear. What would you say would have been your best ever game, or best save that you made?
Best ever game, best save. It's always difficult to say that there's I always remember a decent game that I played, and just talking about people opinions on games and what they look at and all that. We played Hearts outside at East End in the quarter-final of the Cup, and we beat them, and I got man of the match. Wee Murray got man of the match. And he came in and straight away handed me the ball because I'd had a decent game that day, and I had a few saves. And in the very, very last minute, they got a breakaway, and it was a 1-on-1. And I'm just desperately trying to remember. It was a big French striker. Name beginning with an M, can't remember. And I made the 1-on-1 save with him, and the ref blew for full time straight after it. And I always remember Wee Murray says that I should have got the man of the match for that. But saves, there was 2 or 3 saves. There was one important saves, probably more so than anything else. Taking that corner against Dundee United, critical, because of the circumstances. Another one that was interesting, and we're talking about Ian Monroe quite a lot in this discussion, but one of Ian's things when he came as a coach, he had a few quirky ideas, and one of the things he always said was he thought goalkeepers lined their wall up on the wrong side. Because what a goalkeeper does is line the wall up where the ball side is, and he defends the other side. He wanted it the other way about, which was quite an interesting and very unusual kind of philosophy in it. So we'll go back to the season where we won promotion up into the Premier League. We played Meadowbank out there in the final game of the season, and we drew one each one. Yeah, was that the that was the game I drew one each one, and that was the famous when Bobby Forrest crossed the ball and refused to celebrate, and then obviously Big Winker scored when it went underneath Big Boyd's foot, I think, at the time. So anyway, but a lot of people don't remember this, but there was a wide right player for Meadowbank called Stevie Logan. He was a fantastic player, but he was a great striker of the ball. In the last couple of minutes, they got a free kick about 20-25 yards out, and I had to line the wall up the way Ian had said. So it was almost a free shot that he had. Well, he pinged the ball up into the top corner, and it was one of these that it looks a great save, but as a goalkeeper you'd be disappointed if you didn't make it, but it still looks a great save because it's right up in the top corner. You put it over and a couple of minutes later the referee blows for full time. So it was an important save, and it was quite a flashy save, which I wasn't even particularly known for my flashy saves, but it was also a pressure save because of the way it was all set up and in the game. So maybe that was an important save. I don't know about a good save. And there was one I always remember, again a wee quirk in my football career. I was lucky enough to play home and away every team in Scotland in my era. There's a couple of new teams now obviously that I haven't played a bit in my era. First team football I'm talking about. And I played against them home and away and beat every team home and away apart from Rangers. And my granddad and my dad were Rangers supporters, and I don't know whether it was the football gods saying I better not upset them, but we drew with them many times, but that was the only team that, and the couple of times where teams that I played for, I beat them, I was injured. And the famous one when we beat Rangers 2-0, Dave McKellar was in goals because I was injured. But I remember playing against Rangers at Ibrox, and I can't remember who got the ball, but they got to the byline, cut it back, and Alan McCoy's came in, and he couldn't have hit it any better from about 8-9 yards out on the volley. And I was going from the front post to the back post, but he was putting it back in the front post, and I sort of turned in mid-air and got a touch to it and put it round, and I always think that was one of my best saves that I ever made. But I also made a lot of howlers as well, but that's another story. But again, that's a goalie's lot, isn't it?
Yeah. And then Bert obviously left, Dick took over, Dick was sacked, then Jimmy Nick was there for a short wee while. Before Jimmy Calder came in, and then you left.
No, that's an interesting story. When Jimmy Calderwood came in, Jimmy came in the Christmas, the December time, and he pulled me in. And he says, "Look," he says, "you've got your contract's up at the end of the season. You're 36." He says, "To be honest with you, I've not seen much of you play." He says, "But I know a lot about you. You know, very well thought of, etc., etc., etc." He says, "But I'll always bring in my own goalkeepers." And he says, "And I'll be bringing in my own goalkeeper. But what I want you to do," he says, "I want you to be a player coach. Come at the end of the season, I'll be offering you a coaching contract." Sorry, a coach, not a player coach, because that's important to the story. So it was exactly what I wanted. Not playing wasn't what I wanted, but I always wanted to go into the coaching side of it. And Jimmy came in, and he should not be underestimated. The impact that he had in the football club, his methods, his training techniques were first class. I mean, really, really top drawer, and the players bought into that, and obviously he had a significant amount of success. However, right at the end of the season, he'd offered the same sort of position to Hamish French as well. So French and I were, for all intents and purposes, were going to stop playing and then go into the coaching staff, which was always what I wanted to do. However, literally on the Saturday before the last game of the season, me and French were playing over at Morton, the last game of the season, just to say our sort of cheerios as a player. And I'd been approached by a third party on behalf of Alec McLeish, who was the Hibs manager at the time, asking if I'd be interested to come as a player coach to Easter Road. And I hummed and hawed about it. I talked to my dad about it, who always was a bit of a sounding board for me. And he says to me, he says, "If you're going from one of the players on the Saturday to becoming one of the coaching staff on the Monday, sometimes it's better going to a different place, because some people get it, some people don't get it." He says, and with the greatest respect to Dunfermline Football Club, Hibs were top 3 or 4 club at that time in the Premier League. Big club, home. I was living down in Leith at the time, so it was literally half a mile. So all the sort of pluses were significant. So the head was very much telling me it was definitely the move to be, but my heart was saying, well, Dunfermline's my club, I want to stay here. But to be fair, I took the opportunity and went to Hibs, and I had 5 fantastic years, and it was, again, I was very fortunate that I had a bit of success there as well. And and other than probably because of my knee, I would have probably still been there just now. But eventually, 5 years later, the surgeon says, 8 operations later, you've got to try and get a sedentary job, rather than being doing football inside of it. Even standing and passively coaching, it was creating a lot of bother. But Jimmy was great for me. He was very honest with me, and he was great for the football club. But again, it's one of these sliding doors moments, isn't it? That your life changes direction from the path that you thought it was going to go, and that was very much what it was.
Mm-hmm. How do you look back on your career at Dunfermline then?
Oh, complete fondness. There's very, very, very few regrets. Injuries probably big thing. Ian taking over the football club and dismantling a side that didn't need to be dismantled. Different if it was an ageing, team and things like that. That's the only regret. Obviously errors and mistakes, and all that. But I now live in the area. I stay out at Carnock. I've lived in the area since 2003. Ironically, when I moved to Hibs, I moved over here, which was, I just love travelling that Forth Road Bridge, or that's my claim to fame. I must have if I had, what do you call it, points for going over that bridge, I would be a multi-millionaire by now, I always say. But no, it's in my blood. Even though I was, you know, from the west of Edinburgh, when I signed, everybody always automatically thinks I was a Hearts supporter. I didn't support a team as a kid because at that time you played on a Saturday afternoon, and because my dad and my mum were both from Glasgow and my dad was a Rangers supporter, we didn't have any allegiance to any Hearts or Hibs or Meadowbank at the time. So we played football as opposed to going watching it, and if there was a midweek game on at Tynecastle or Easter Road that was a decent game, you know, occasionally we used to go, but there was no genuine allegiance there. And I trained both with Hearts and Hibs as a kid, and then signed for Hearts, but everybody automatically thinks I was a Hearts supporter because of the sort of geography and the sort of connection. But I wasn't. But you know, if anybody asks me now, what football team do you support, I always say, you know, Dunfermline's my team. You know, and it has been since '85, and it will be until I'm no longer on this earth, I suppose, you know, but that's it. So, fond memories, you know, I know it's not a great word to say, but it's a nice football club, you know, and I think there's not too many clubs that you can say that about.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ian. It's been lovely speaking to you and lovely seeing you back at East End Park again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.